صباح الخير يا دكاترة. النهاردة إن شاء الله هنبتدي مع بعض نشرح Development of the Branchial Apparatus أو Pharyngeal Arches. قبل ما نبتدي شرح بنوجه جزيل الشكر للأستاذ الدكتورة منى زهير إن هي ادتنا الفرصة إن احنا نعمل فيديو الشرح دوت على برزنتيشن دكتورة منى زهير هي اللي عاملاها بنفسها. نبدأ الشرح مع بعض يا دكاترة. حاجة بمقدمة. Up to the fourth week of the intrauterine life the neck is not yet formed. لسه مفيش neck اتكونت أصلا. الهيد سويلنج هيبقى فولود دايركتلي بحاجه اسمها الكاردياك سويلنج، والاثنين سيبريتد عن بعضيهم بديبريشن صغير كده بنسميه استوموديوم. الاستوموديوم دوت اللي هو يبقى ان شاء الله قدام حاجه اسمها الفيوتشر نيك. زي ما احنا شايفين بعد كده ديورنج ذا فيفث ويك الميزوديرم اون ايتش سايد بتاع الاستوموديوم دوت شوينج حاجه اسمها انتروبوستيرور سيجمنتيشن، يبتدي يحصل سيجمنتيشن نفسه ويتحول لحاجه اسمها 6 ايفيدنت سيجمنت واضحين بيسموهم فارنجال ارشز، وبالتالي عند الفيفث ويك بقى عندي ظهر حاجه اسمها 6 فارنجال ارشز موجودين قدامنا. لما نمسك الفارنجال ارشز دول كده بالراحه واحده واحده هنلاقي ادي منظر للفارنجال ارشز متاخد فيه ككات سيكشن. هنبص نلاقي ان ايتش فارنجال ارش ما هو الا كور اوف ميزوديرم درايفد فروم ذا نيورال كريست سيلز، كفرد من بره بحاجه اسمها اكتوديرم، وكفرد من جوه او فروم انسايد بحاجه اسمها اندوديرم زي ما احنا شايفين. كل فارنجال ارش من دولت ليه البلاد وليه النيرف سبلاي بتاعه. الحته دي مهمه بقى. انا عندي الفيرست فارنجال ارش ده بنسميه مانديبولار ارش، وده بيديفايد بعد كده لحاجه اسمها ماكسيلاري ومانديبولار بروسيس. السكند ارش بنسميه هايويد ارش. السكسيدنج ارشز ار كولد ثيرد وفورث وفيفث و6 اكوردنج تو ذير نمبر. هنلاقيهم الرقم 5 راح فين؟ الفيفث فارنجال ارش كومبليتلي ديسابير نتيجه ايرلي ديجنريشن اوف اتس بلاد سبلاي. ده منظر تاني. externally the arches are separated from each other بحاجه اسمها ectodermal grooves called pharyngeal clefts. يبقى outside ectodermal grooves pharyngeal clefts separated from each other from inside by endodermal grooves which are called pharyngeal arches. نبدا في الديريفاتيفز بتاعت كل ارش. اول حاجه عندي حاجه اسمها الميزوديرمال ديريفاتيفز اوف ذا pharyngeal arch. اول ارش عندنا هو الفيرست ارش. الفيرست ارش دوت ديفلوبس انتو فور برومينانسز، تمام، تو ماكسيلاري برومينانسز وحاجه اسمها تو مانديبولار برومينانسز. ذا فيرست فارنجال ارش ديفايد انتو ماكسيلاري اند مانديبولار بروسيس. ذا ميزنكايم اوف ذا ماكسيلاري بروسيس فورم حاجه اسمها البري ماكسيلا والماكسيلا والزيجوما وبارت من حاجه اسمها التمبورال بون. زي ما ادي البري ماكسيلا والماكسيلا تمبورال بون. ذا مانديبولار بروسيس والفورم ذا مالياس والانكس وحاجه اسمها الميكلز كارتريج. المانديبل develops by membranous ossification of the mesodermal condensation around the Meckel's cartilage. والميكلز كارتريج disappear except small part منها بس هو اللي بيتبقى يدي حاجه اسمها sphenomandibular ligament. skeletal derivatives of the first arch to be summarized هتبقى عباره عن مالياس، انكس، sphenomandibular ligament and mandible. while the muscular derivatives of the first pharyngeal arch will be muscles of mastication, anterobiliogastric, myelohyoid muscle, tensor palatii, tensor tympani. Finally, the nerve supply of the first arch is the mandibular nerve. The artery of the first arch is the maxillary artery. This is in summary for the first arch. Now, second arch. The second arch, which is called the hyoid arch, the cartilage is called the Ricketts cartilage. Skeletal derivatives of the second arch will be stapes, styloid process of the temporal bone, stylohyoid ligament, lesser horn of the hyoid bone, and the upper part of the body of the hyoid bone. The muscular derivatives of the second arch will be muscle of expression, occipitofrontalis, muscles of the auricle, platysma, posterior belly of digastric, stylohyoid muscle, and the stapedius of the middle ear. Finally, the nerve supply will be the facial nerve, and the artery will be disappeared, except small part of it will form the stapedial and the hyoid arteries. The third arch. The third pharyngeal arch is cartilage from the lower part of the body and the greater horn of the hyoid bone. The stylopharyngeus muscle, it is the muscle of the third arch. The nerve will be glossopharyngeal nerve. The artery will be the aortic arch that persists to form the common carotid artery and the stem of the internal carotid, as will be discussed in the great vessels. Now the fourth arch. The cartilage forms the thyroid cartilage. The cricothyroid is the only muscle. The nerve supply will be the superior laryngeal nerve. The artery will be the fourth aortic arch that persists. On the left side, it forms the main part of the arch of the aorta, while on the right side, it will form the stem of the right subclavian artery. The sixth pharyngeal arch, its cartilage will be the cricoid, arytenoid, corniculate, and cuneiform cartilages of the larynx. Its muscle will be the intrinsic muscles of the larynx. The nerve supply, as mentioned, will be the recurrent laryngeal nerve. This is in summary for the arches. Also in summary, this is the nerve supply of the all arches together is clearly seen. Now we will begin discussing about what's called the pharyngeal pouches. If we remember, what is the definition of the pharyngeal pouches? It is endodermal grooves separating the pharyngeal arches from inside. We have 4 pair of pharyngeal pouches. The last one is divided into 2 parts. Derivatives of the pharyngeal pouches will be, first pharyngeal pouch will give, it forms the diverticulum called the tubotympanic recess. The distal portion will wide to form the tympanic cavity. The proximal portion will form the auditory tube. The tympanic cavity come into relation with the external acoustic meatus separated from it was called tympanic membrane. This is in summary the first pouch give rise to the middle ear cavity and the auditory tube. Another view, this is the derivatives of the first pharyngeal pouch. Now the second pouch. The second pharyngeal pouch will form the palatine tonsil. How? The endoderm form a solid epithelial growth into the surrounding mesoderm as we see. The central cells degenerate, forming what's called the tonsillar clefts. From the third to fifth month, the tonsil is infiltrated with what's called the lymphoid tissue. Now the tonsil is ready to be formed. Finally, the capsule of the tonsil will be developed from a condensation of the surrounding mesenchyme. Part of the pouch remain in the adult and it is called the tonsillar fossa. It is the remnant of the pouch. Now the third pharyngeal pouch. It is divided into dorsal and ventral wings as we see. As the fifth week, the endoderm of the dorsal wing will form the inferior parathyroid gland, while the ventral wing will form what's called the thymus gland. But actually it is not the final position. As the thymus developed, it enlarged and migrate caudally, directing pulling inferior parathyroid gland with it. Both glands lose connection with the pharyngeal wall, and the two loops of the thymus come close together and diffused retrosternally and then will disappear, while the inferior parathyroid gland is adherent to the posterior surface of the thyroid gland. The fourth pharyngeal pouch. It is divided into dorsal and ventral wings. The dorsal wing will form the superior parathyroid gland, while the endoderm of the ventral wing will form what's called the ultimobranchial body, which is a rudimentary thymus. The superior parathyroid loops connection with the pharyngeal wall will migrate to adhere to the posterior wall of the surface gland, which is the final position of its site. It lies at a higher level than the inferior parathyroid gland. As you see, the ultimobranchial body will incorporate it into the thyroid gland to form what's called the parafollicular cells. Finally, other views report that the ultimobranchial body may be completely disappear. So we have two theories in this area. This is in summary very important table for the fate of the pharyngeal pouches. Very important table in the written exam. Now the pharyngeal clefts or branchial clefts, they are ectodermal grooves separating the pharyngeal arches from outside. The first cleft penetrate the underlying mesenchyme to form what's called the external auditory meatus, and the outer layer will form the tympanic membrane. This was discussed before. Here the air pinna develop as a result of growth and fusion of 6 small elevations around the meatus. The 3 elevations develop from the first arch, 3 elevations from the second. The second pharyngeal arch enlarge and grow inferiorly in the neck. Thus, the second, third, fourth cleft are buried in. They fuse together forming what's called cervical sinus. Later this sinus become obliterated by fusion walls. Congenital anomaly. If this sinus is not degenerated, it will persist forming what's called the branchial cyst. It is a remnant of the cervical sinus located below the angle of the mandible. This cyst may open externally, forming what's called external branchial fistula. The cervical sinus remain in contact with the surface by a narrow canal. This is an example. Or it may open internally, forming what's called internal branchial fistula. It will open into the tonsillar fossa, as we see here. Thank you so much.